Hi, everybody. I just had an incredible conversation with my good friend Fallon. We discuss an article that argues for people to stop making economic policies about race. I know it's tough. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we can convince you. Uh, and in the process, we talk about how we can, as people who want really progressive economic ideas, how we can outreach to more people and gain more supporters and get more people elected, and also maybe how there are people in society who are underrepresented that maybe we could do more to listen to them, hear them out, and do what could help them in certain ways. So, super fun conversation. I hope you guys like it. Populist versus woke capitalists. That's what this article is about. I'm gonna have the link for the show notes, or for the article that we reviewed below. Thank you so much to Slow Boring and to Marc, the writer. He has a tough last name to pronounce, so I don't wanna butcher it. But thank you very much for writing this article. It's very interesting. Sparked a lot of thought, debate, and fun conversations within me and my circles. So thank you to you guys at Slow Boring and for writing the article. Without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with my friend Fallon, the Populist. Hey everybody! For goodness sake, welcome back to another episode of the For Goodness Sake podcast or YouTube channel. Really happy to have you guys back. Today I have a really special guest. His name is Fallon Anderson. We've been friends for a while, and I thought that he was the perfect guest to discuss a really interesting article that I knew we both would love and would have a lot to talk about. And I thought it'd be really important for other people who maybe are fans of me, who care about me, and probably align politically with me because of just how we get in our bubbles of following different people. I thought this is a really good article for liberal, progressive, lefty type people to check out and to learn about. So without further ado, let's talk about the article. Do you want to just go through and kind of give some things that you talked about? I have some notes of where I wanted to point out different things that I was interested in. Do you want to do the step by step, like what you found interesting, and I can just stop you if I find something?
Yeah, there were a couple specific points that I wanted to go over with the article, and it sounds like you do the same. So why don't we just hop into it here, and then we can just kind of take it step by step if we both kind of have a couple things we want to really hit on.
Yeah, sweet. I think that first paragraph was like one of the things that were interesting to me, or I guess the second paragraph really. What about you?
So I how do I put this? So sorry, I switched back. I guess it just shows you. But I guess the main thing I want to hit on is this concept of the zero sum framing. So this to me is an important thing, and this is I guess there's kind of three ways I think this is important. So first of all, there are some issues, namely about, like, for instance, like during the pandemic, there was like a business, like a relief program, and obviously, the money given to it wasn't infinite, right? So, and there was way more people who needed help than it had money, of course. So in that case, there was a zero-sum game. There's a zero-sum game with a number of vaccinations, which I want to talk about in a bit. But there were also some things on here which were not zero-sum. Yeah. And so that is like kind of my immediate criticism of the article, I guess I say, is like there are some things where I'm like, that's not really the case.
Right. Okay. Okay.
But there's also I wanted to talk about. So I guess this is kind of difficult to say, but I'm trying to think of like the way to put this. So I think me and you understand that, like, a lot of time, like, the federal government just like funds programs through deficit spending. Like, it does this to like when they spent $1 trillion or whatever during the pandemic, no one raised taxes on me or anyone else to pay for that, right?
Right.
But this is not the case at a state or local level, right? If you give people money you have to directly raise taxes on somebody, or you will, in a short term, like 5 to 10 year basis, have massive deficits that will cripple
You'd
you,
run out
right?
of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple like exceptions. Like I think it's like capital. Like if they invest in like infrastructure, they have a little more wiggle room on that. But like that's just getting pedantic. But yeah, like the short term, or like the too long didn't read version is like, yeah, eventually states and cities need to pay for things that the federal government doesn't always need to.
Yeah.
Although we act like we do sometimes, which is annoying to me as like a lefty that wants to spend a bunch of money.
I hear that in some frames as well. It is kind of annoying to me as well, though probably not for the same programs you want, but to a great extent, I do hear you. But
Right.
The one thing that I do think is important, though, is that the vast majority of the population does not get that. They think it's the same with the feds, right? Where they think if the feds give someone $1, it came directly from someone through taxes.
Right. Just like buying, just paying for things, like if they were to buy something out of their own pockets. It's like, well, I earned this money and like I only have so much money coming in. The federal government only has so much money coming in. If they want to buy something, it costs an X amount, and you can't exceed that amount, that you have coming in. Which is not the case. That's not how the federal government works, but it's very common for people to think that way.
Yeah, and I think that some of these things, which they're talking about being zero-sum framing, I don't exactly think that they are. This idea of like every advantage for one group of people would mean a disadvantage for a different group of people. I don't think that's necessarily the case at a federal level. Right. However, I also think that there are some issues that are like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a fair critique. And, there are some, like, I think that, like, even if you looked at, like, getting into political office, like, political office is zero sum, right? Which is not exactly an economic thing, but, like, it's...
You win or you lose.
Right, exactly, and so I agree with that. Like, there are some things that you could find, but I think for the vast majority of things, like, if you agree that we could fund a lot more things with federal government dollars or deficit spending, then we could probably agree that most things that are an issue could be taken care of in that sense. Yeah. And then I just actually wanted to flag that sentence that you were highlighting too about the progressives, right? Like that's something that I wanted to highlight, which is the conservatives and they mentioned this, right? So like the conservatives might use that idea of like, oh, well, we're on a deficit, and oh, we can't spend too much, and oh, we don't have the money. Who's going to pay for it? And taking the money of your hard-earned dollars and paying for some welfare queen or whatever. I don't know. Like, there's all these old stereotypes that the conservatives will use to like not pay for helping people out. But I think that the important part is that this article is directed at progressives, essentially. And they're saying that when we are talking about things that help everybody, we often make it in a sense of, well, people have white privilege and people don't have white privilege, and so we need to do things to help people that don't have white privilege, or other similar conversations. And so that's like what I want to key in on for the rest of this conversation, that we as progressives, Fallon, you can disregard yourself from this. We as progressives need to not think of everything as zero sum, that if white people get something, if white people are benefiting, if people who are not like the extreme poor are benefiting, and if anybody else besides like the most poor, if minorities, et cetera, if anybody else gets something, that's not a failure, that's a good thing. Like everybody, universal programs are helpful at doing the exact same things that any policy to reduce an individual thing will do, which is exactly what you're pointing out right there, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what and like for instance, the minimum wage is the greatest example of this, because like the minimum wage, like the government is just raising a regulation, it's not actually spending any money. And so like there's really, I guess what I would say is like with the wage, it would do this, I think. Like I think it would actually correctly reduce racial inequality, but really it would help people of all racial groups, like
exactly.
all.
It's
Yeah.
If you are poor, it's gonna help you. And
Yeah.
like not incidentally, there's like a historical racialized history to the United States that like made it so that there's a higher percentage of poor minorities in the country than there are of poor white people in terms of like the percentage of the total of both
Population.
groups.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are like many more poor white people than there are of any other race, right? There are just many more white people in general, so the percentage is off. But so anything you do to reduce poverty in general is going to disproportionately affect and improve the lives of people of color. But it's also going to, and it should, improve a lot of white people's lives. And like that's like a good thing. Like, it's like we should make people understand that we're also like the minimum wage is going to raise the wages of a lot of white people across the country, and like their lives will be better.
Yeah, and I actually want to point out, back in the 70s, under Nixon was actually a fan of the minimum wage, and not because he had I don't think Nixon really was big on this.
That part, the racial
part. But here Nixon wanted to do this because Nixon actually had broad-based support for the unions, and I don't know how much you know about that. I'm actually part of one, but the unions, to a great extent, the amount of pay each union worker gets, it's a certain percentage of the minimum wage is how it's usually argued. So if the minimum wage increases, their paychecks increase automatically.
Wow. Okay, well that's really interesting. Yeah. I've seen that a lot of unions in the 70s and 60s had, and before that too, actually, excuse me, a lot of them had like cost of living adjustments like you're talking about. Like that would be a cost of living adjustment where, where as time goes on, your pay naturally increases because they know, we all know, like inflation
occurs.
And like we shouldn't just like be stuck at the same rates that like our grandfathers were making, and grandmothers, so yeah, like that's a great reason why I feel like I've heard this in many different ways. Union membership has declined as wealth inequality and economic inequality has increased in the past 40 years. So like minimum wage is a huge thing. Union membership is a huge thing that would like benefit the entire country, and I think most people are very supportive of this. Like if you do polls, like these things pass in red and blue states alike,
Yeah, and I mean, the states they fail in, like there was some example a couple weeks ago about some Amazon union that like failed to pass a vote, and there was like, and there were a lot of more conservative sources that were like celebrating this as like the unions being bad, and I looked into this more and I was like, nah, Amazon just like had a lot of propaganda and was like they were very good at like using AI to like figure out who was going to vote for that and like firing those people.
Yeah. Dude, I saw something. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I saw something that said that they like they had like talked to the local government there, like the city, like, and talked to them and said like, hey, we want this specific area, like strip of your city, all of the lights, the stoplights on the city to like go in a certain cadence so that it removes any time for anybody when they're on their way into the Amazon workshop to have any time to stop and talk to another like union member or like somebody who's trying to create the union. Like so they're like if it would normally just be a bunch of green lights, like it would just be like red light, red light, red light, red light. Like the city complied and they're like, oh yeah, we did it on our own. That was our own choice.
Just like the most like dystopian form of like AI surveillance and like doing everything like that particular thing made like a 0.0001% difference, and they still like devoted resources to doing it.
It's like worth it. It's like worth it because like in the aggregate, like in 70 years or something, that's like 1 million people that were like saved from unionizing or something. I don't know. Like,
but that was actually. really horrifying to me that that company was able to use AI to like predict people's vote. Just
no, they do a lot of stuff. Like Amazon does a lot of stuff to prevent unionship.
Well,
And
they're not the only one.
oh yeah, right. I mean, you got Walmart, Amazon, Facebook. You know what? Facebook's like really creative. Facebook like gets a lot of their workers from like immigrants. They give like like the green, the visas, like the working visas.
Yeah, it's legal immigrant thing. Yeah.
Right. So they get, and then like these immigrants are like so happy that it's like they're in America, they're like on part of this big company, and it's like amazing, and like they're paid like pretty well, but like they're just like not in a worse situation that they immigrated from, and
wasn't there I'm sorry, I don't think it was Facebook. Wasn't there a company where like they would get these people's things approved, so these people would have passports and green cards, and then they'd like keep the green cards and the passports in a safe, so like people couldn't do anything without,
Oh my God, that's scary. I hope not. I believe it, but I haven't heard about that. Facebook's was just like they would be so happy as the immigrant workers like in our country, which is a great country, in many ways, that they would just like not want to like stir up trouble to like get even better working conditions because it was already an improvement. So it's a little easier strategy.
Yeah, so that caused a general decline in conditions because
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
We digress. So we're dancing around the issue here. I think that, which is just things that are good for poor people, things that are good for any amount, whether it's poor Black people, poor white people, whatever, they're actually going to reduce racial inequality. They're gonna help economic inequality in general, right? Like, that's like the basic point for now, right?
And there was one thing I wanted to directly go off of this thing on, if you have a second here with the cancel. Okay,
this is your time.
Okay, so the student debt cancellation thing, I was looking into this because like I have student debt, so that'd be pretty lit, But
Me too, but
yeah, so but anyway, there was a discussion during the like presidential campaign or during the maybe it was during the Democrat primaries, but they're talking about how much student debt they were going to cancel, right? And there were people I actually think it was the New York Times who were like arguing that like if you canceled, I think it was over 10K in debt, it would like disproportionately benefit white people. And so therefore like they reduced how much they wanted to like cancel to 5K because then it would like disproportionately benefit non-white people. And I was like how, like, come on,
Yeah, dude, no, it's so stupid. Like, it's like so stupid that like they would think that. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and it's also like if you were like somebody who wasn't white and you were 10K in debt, and they were just like no,
me, like
they were just like
because right, because in the aggregate, like in like the entire country, all the people who have student debt, like 5 more or like whatever 5% more would be white that were benefited with this than were Black or Latino or something. Like that's like, then I don't get my debt, as a Black, poor, first generation, 4-year university student. Like, I mean, like all the son of an immigrant. Like, I mean, like I check like all these boxes and like I would just be like thrown out because of like, I don't know, racial equality.
They want to like give you less so that like it like statistically and like in like a very like dumb like extreme logical leap would be like not statistically benefiting white people.
Right. No, right.
Yeah.
And then like meanwhile, like there are just like literally a bunch of poor white people who like are struggling and like, in the same position, like whether they're like, maybe they're just like a few generations back, but that they've been in this country or their family's been in this country, but they're just like extremely poor and like they just like made it out of whatever poor situation they were in, like urban or rural, whatever, and like now they're strapped with hundreds of thousands in debt, and it's like, well, screw you, you're not getting it because it's gonna help someone else more.
It's one of those things, and
your mic cut. I think.
Oh, is it sounding weird?
Yep, you're back. I think.
Okay, it's sounding better now. Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, there was, and another thing I wanted to go off this topic is this article here from Scientific America. So they gave gave minority residents in Vermont priority for COVID vaccines.
Right.
And I want to talk about this in two ways, because first of all, of course, there's only X number of COVID vaccines, so this actually is kind of a zero sum game type thing, right?
That's fair. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, and I wish I had the health article, but they did a study about the outcomes of this, because it was only going on for like a month and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was that since the percentage of elderly people who die of COVID is so high, that this prioritization of like people of color who were younger actually resulted in more people of color dying, because it wasn't essentially what they did is they prioritized.
Sounds funny. I shouldn't laugh.
But I know. But they prioritized like they gave equal access to younger people, but since older people die at such a higher rate, even though the older like people of color population is much lower in the older age groups, since the death rate is so much higher, it actually resulted in more people of color dying.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of just like, like, come on.
No, this is like, I think California did the same thing, right? They had like these really strict, like kind of like, we're going to prioritize minority communities, poor communities. Like they had these like checklists, like all these rigorous, kind of ways that they were going to go through the vaccination process. And then like, they just like ended up having a bunch of bottlenecks, and like they couldn't get these vaccines out because there weren't enough people from X community that was like checking enough boxes to like come get a vaccine. And like they just basically had to like, oh, okay, well, this is just stupid. Let's actually just like, it was a good-hearted attempt, right? Like, let's just give away as many as possible. Let's do, and I think this is also a good thing that like I commend Biden for. Like, I think that he had a good balance of like, let's do the work to get outreach in poor communities. Like this is not just like urban communities of color. This is like rural communities. Yeah, like and like get the vaccine to the places. Work to get to the vaccine to places that are not getting them right now for a number of different reasons, both historical and contemporary. Right, but in the meantime, like in addition to that, I guess maybe is a better way. In addition to that, let's not make it as zero sum as we can by like also just pushing out as many as we can to the elderly, people that need it right now, that will get it, and to as many people after that as well. So I think that Biden had a good balance of that. And I think eventually California did, and they ended up having, I think they're up in the top percentage of states with emergency or with vaccination distributions, but they were really hampered in the beginning from like trying to have a good racial equity policy, which I can respect because of the disproportionate effects on minority communities or for COVID and all these things. So I can respect it, but it doesn't always work out. And like I'm glad they adjusted, and like sometimes it's just like, all right, that didn't work out. Let's just get better. Like
No, I hear you, but it's just one of those things that's kind of funny. Like, I understand you want to help people, but like you actually like ended up, like you made this situation worse. And like I know it was like we were kind of laughing at the irony, but like if you think about it, it's like a really horrifying thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Like people literally died, and
they couldn't get it, and it's like, if that was like your grandpa or something who couldn't get it because of that, how mad would you be? It's just like.
But I mean, and like, here's the thing though, and like, this is, I think, an important disclaimer for this conversation about this article is a critique of the efficacy of leftist policy messaging, right? Like there's like this article is saying like we would be more effective at the things we want to do if we said it this way. But it's not like, oh, well, your policies that you want are resulting in people being hurt intentionally and you don't care, et cetera, et cetera. And that's like a big difference where like all policy has like possibilities to fail and like these repercussions that come out of them that you can't exactly predict or control, and some are worse than others, and this is definitely one in that Vermont case, except especially, you know, like that's definitely one where we can be like, yeah, that's like a problem that was like serious, and you know, that was a mistake that we made as a government. But at least it was a mistake in good intentions, and at least, you know, I think that the majority of reasonable, rational people will come back and affect it and try to improve it, right? Where I think that there are people in politics who act in bad faith in that they know things have a negative effect on people, and they do not want to go back and improve that.
I hear you to some extent, but also I'm like, you kind of have to be acting in the Vermont case. Like, you are deliberately choosing not to give one group of people like a life-saving treatment based on their race. You know, like if you were a doctor and you know, let's say you had a cure for anything, you had 2 people dying, you know, wouldn't it just be kind of messed up to make that decision based on what race they are? Like,
I mean, I see that, but it's like I also see, and maybe like the race thing is not as important as like if they did it like geographically, right? Like,
and like it's one thing if you said like it's a 6-year-old girl dying versus like an 80-year-old man, but like if you just looked at somebody like, oh, this person is this race, so we're not giving it to them. Like, right. I just think that's really fundamentally kind of messed up.
Right. Yeah, you know? It is a problem. And like, this is a complicated topic specifically because this isn't just like, I mean, all of the topics about race-based policies are controversial and like kind of dicey, but like this isn't like college, you know. I feel like college is like affirmative action is like one thing that we could, you know, and there's reasons for and against, and I understand that it's not just an easy one way or another, but I think that like, I don't know, determining whether or not somebody gets like their college
life-saving thing,
right, versus you know, literally if we're saving their life, it's different. But then specifically too, like this virus like was negatively impacting people of color in a specific way that was different than how it was impacting white people as well. And so I think that's something that makes it a little bit more difficult for like health professionals are thinking like, oh, well, maybe this is a good idea because they are disproportionately affected by it. So they should be disproportionately, you know, reached out to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see how it's like, it seems a little different to me.
It's not, like, it's not exactly the same as a life-saving treatment. I understand that analogy isn't perfect, but it's fundamentally a very ugly thing to me.
It's very ugly. It's very ugly. I would not want to be one of the people like running for re-election, and that was like something they could say against me in Vermont.
Like, I mean, that's the joke about all the people in Vermont who did that probably will get re-elected.
Really?
They probably will. Yeah.
I don't know the politics of Vermont. I mean, they got like Bernie Sanders, so they must be pretty like lefty.
I mean, I think like every part of the government in Vermont is blue, and so like I'm pretty sure like those people will get reelected. I'm pretty sure the Republicans aren't going to take over Vermont.
Yeah. All right. There's not going to be a grassroots Tea Party rising.
Not in Vermont.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah. Continue the article. I know I made it kind of a big aside. Yeah.
No worries, man. Like, I mean, I'm told all the time people want longer videos, but then like I look at the analytics of my videos and like nobody sits through like all of the videos. So, you know, I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that we're going completely off track in terms of like in terms of my like actual desire to have people watch videos, but in terms of my desire to have a great conversation and just shoot the breeze about politics, which I always love to do. I'm enjoying myself, so let's just have fun, man. Like that's what it's all about. Like,
yeah. But moving on to this thing where they talk about the baby bonds proposal. I think this is a great example of another thing where it's just like if you sold this this proposal on a loan, it would probably be more successful just because it wouldn't trigger people's, I guess we'll call it lizard. I think the good word for it would be lizard brain state politics response, which is like, who is this coming from? Is it me? Are they directly going to take this money from me? You know, since
it's going to them.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, you're right.
But
That is a little lizard brain action.
yeah, but like with this case, it's for everybody, and it's from the feds, so you know it's a very good example. Yeah, yeah, just do it. Like you don't need to, and that's something I want to go on. You know, there's a lot of other examples here we can talk about, but if we go down here, so the libertarians, rest in peace, high school libertarian me, are about 4% of the electorate, right? But these other groups they talked about, so there's the liberals, left on economic and socially. Then there's the populists who are left on economic but right on social. Right. And then there's the conservatives who are right on econ and social, right?
And just for like, you know, because I don't know, like just to give everybody a quick like primer in if you're not super into political discussions, right? So like the basic issue is that like, you know, people tend to vote on two different major axes, right? In terms of like policies tend to be either one of two issues. They tend to be issues that we worry about, like how we spend money on it, or like, you know, if we're going to throw money at the problem, right? About taxes, about, you know, funding welfare programs, about feeding people, housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's other issues that are more they called social issues, right? And like they're more about feelings of who belongs necessarily, what the characterization of certain issues in society are. Any other? Would you like to throw in anything on that?
Yeah, so I guess just to like give an example, everybody. So like economics, right? It's like if you're left on economics, like Obamacare would be a main issue, or so not stopping Social Security cuts, right? If you're left on like social things,
or like canceling student loan debt or something.
Yeah. If you're left on social things, then maybe like I don't know, abortion or stuff like that.
Trans issues, maybe even.
Do you think? I feel like at this point,
I'm like I feel like the gay and trans issues. I think trans issues are still pretty salient, especially to the current Republican Party, at least federally. I think that the gay rights issue has like progressed so far in such a short time that it's incredible, first of all, but that it's not really like an issue people are like running against. So,
but that immigration. Do you think immigration is social? Yeah. Okay.
I think there is like an econ aspect to it for sure, but immigration is a great social issue.
Yeah. And then on the right, so like if you were right on economics, you'd be against Obamacare. You'd be against more spending. If you were right on social things, you know, you'd be against immigration or against gun control is a very prominent social thing for the right.
Great idea.
Or against abortion, right?
And the upshot of this article is essentially like showing that we all, it's like a big graph. We could scroll down and even just show the little boxes if we wanted.
Oh, is there the box graph? Oh,
yeah. Just because they're just a little easier to conceptualize it. So you could either be in our little box here, you could be right on econ issues. And I think a little further down, actually, they have like the four. There we go. That's
yes. Here we go.
Yeah. So if we look at this is comparing one economic issue on the top and how people answer, whether they are left in the yes column, whether they support the more progressive lefty economic issue, or in the no column, whether they're more right on that issue. And then it has a social issue, a social component, and it shows that people can either be right, and they'd be in the top bracket. They could be more socially conservative, where they don't agree with or they do agree with the statement that's a little bit more socially conservative, or they could be a little bit more left, where they don't agree with that statement. So the big upshot of this article is that there are a bunch more people in this country who are economically on the left, economically very progressive, but socially they're on the right. Okay, and that would be Right, and that would be like Fallon, and that's why he's on the podcast here. And what we have a good name from it in this article. I guess it's common name, Populist, right?
They give it populist, but to me that's like really associated with like Trump. I would use the term communitarianism because that's about like that's like one culture, like one kind of really socially connected, organized area with like liberal economics.
Well, that's a good political science.
Okay,
Lesson for
sorry.
everybody else. No, it's good. Like I'm glad everybody has that definition. They'll probably hear of them as populists or Trump voters that swung from Obama, right? Like that's a big thing.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah. There was a large percentage of people who voted for Obama twice even. And then when Hillary Clinton came around, they voted for Trump. And there's just so many different things that people say about this. And like nobody knows why these people changed their votes exactly. But like this to me is the most compelling with all the evidence that we have is that Obama ran on a campaign of, and this is jumping down to the end of the article of what I wanted to say, and that's all right. We can just stay here if you want. They mention Obama at the end of this article as how effective he was at knowing that people do not want to hear him talk about socially liberal things, like about how bad blacks have it in society and how systemic racism is rendered against them, or all these different things. And regardless, like I'm a bleeding heart lefty. Like I agree, systemic racism exists, and blah 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 blah, and implicit biases. I agree with all those things, but like he's totally right that like people didn't want to hear this like super intelligent, our Harvard elite lawyer grad, like who's now the president, like go on stage and talk about like, oh well, guys, systemic racism exists, and us black folk really have it bad. Like,
and I was gonna go off that a little bit and just go off with this particular two statements here. So this is these are people who are against the Mitch McConnell position, right? So they're against cutting Social Security and Medicaid, right? But they're also not big fans of the Black Lives Matter group, right? And so what they find is that 69% of Trump voters think it's wrong to cut Social Security and Medicare, and 25% of Biden voters prefer the all lives matter statement, right? So these are these kind of populist people where they're not a big fan of like really hardcore conservative econ positions, but they also kind of like more conservative social positions.
Right.
And this unfortunately doesn't hit it, but of these two groups, basically Trump did better in 2016, and this is like this percentage among the Dems was smaller, and so that's why he won in 2016.
Yeah,
and
I think
lost
if you scroll down, there's like a comparison of all of the 2016 votes right there. I think that's it. Yep.
Here you go.
Yeah. Yep. That's our money right there. That's our money. So these are the people. These are how these people voted. So you have the people on the bottom left who are both economically and socially liberal, and those people clearly are voting for Hillary Clinton, like smoked, voting for Trump, like not even close. And then you on the opposite, in the top right, I was going to go with the economic and socially right people who overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump, right? There's like Clinton had zero chance with those people. Trump had zero chance with the bottom left people, right? Now you have the other two who are like more split. And this is where you see Hillary Clinton lose that vote. Because go ahead.
I also, actually, this is better. I want to point out,
like that.
General percents of population here. Right. So in this is the libertarians, right? So basically no one
He calls them libertarians. I like the name woke capitalists. Like because they're like that's a funny name. I heard people call these people that. So like woke capitalists, like they're into woke culture. They're like really socially liberal. They think that, blacks have it bad and minorities have it bad, and like also we should watch what we say online, I guess. I don't know. Free speech doesn't matter as much to them, I guess. I don't know. It's not even really free speech, but regardless. So they're the woke culture, but they're also these capitalists who don't want to pay for social spending, social, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So these are people who are like really socially left, but economically right.
Right. And they're
weird people.
Yeah. I used to be one. But fun story. Anyway.
And you see, because there's only 3% of the American population are these people.
Yeah.
They are weird. Like, it's okay to bully these people. I'm just kidding.
Oh gosh. I don't want to bully. I got some libertarian friends. But they just haven't seen the light that I'm trying to shine to them. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Keep it up. Tell them to become socially and economically liberal, just like me. That's what they need.
Okay. But the other thing I was going to point out is so this all Republican and this all Democrat are evenly divided. And so basically whoever wins this, which is actually the majority of the four groups, wins the election. And so you can see Trump won them by a little bit here in 2016, and that was just enough to win him the election.
Yep. Because you can see how, so Clinton won 92% of her group in the social left, 92% compared to 85% for Trump. So she did better with liberals than Trump did with conservatives.
Yeah, so she did better with libertarians than Trump did too.
And she did better with libertarians / woke capitalists. But it's the populists that make the difference, because they are not only the majority of the population, they also swing back and forth.
And they are overrepresented in purple states as well.
Yeah. In that all levels of that affects the Electoral College, that affects the Senate, that affects housing or the House. So that very highly represented in purple states, which are the most important states for gaining power at a national level. Yeah. So that's the upshot of this article. That's the main, that's, if there's one thing, it's that there's a bunch of the top left category. There's a bunch of these quote unquote populists, and they swing back and forth. And when we talk about like the baby bonds, and we say we're going to give a bunch of baby bonds to poor people, and then they're going to become less poor over time, and that's a good thing.
People are happy.
Those people get happy. Now, if I say the same exact policy, I am going to give a bunch of baby bonds to poor people, and it's going to make a bunch of poor people less poor, and it's going to close the racial wealth gap. Those people are sad, and they go vote for Trump. And I don't know, riot at the Capitol or something. Sorry, I'm sorry. That was a low blow. I'm sorry.
But what I was gonna say is it's not okay. So the close the racial wealth gap, it's not typically portrayed that way. It's portrayed in a way of we are giving benefits to this one group of we're giving benefits to only this group of people, and these people. Right, with that lizard brain state government funding ideology.
It's okay because you're talking about your own group.
Yes, it's okay for me to say that. So don't nobody spurg out about being mad about that. Okay, it's my own group of people, so calm down. But these people then are well, that money is coming from us, so now we don't like that, right? So it's not just that they don't like this other group of people. It's they think somebody's going to directly take our money and give it away, right? It's directly going to go to somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I think that this is essentially, we can think about how the Republican Party right now is not a party of here's our platform, we're going to convince you to vote for us. It's an opposition party, right? We could agree on that.
Somewhat. I mean, I think parts of it are like that, parts of it not so much. But yeah.
Yeah, like a major reason why they win is like scaring, the populace into not voting for Democrats based on either things that they make up about Democrats or things that Democrats say that are stupid, Like, would you agree with that?
Um,
Like that's a major tactic for them, at least, if not like
I would
the
disagree
tactic.
somewhat because I think some of the social right things, like I think the Democrats would actually do, like gun control. I think they actually would do that. I think there are some Democrats who are actually like would be crazy enough to vote for like totally open borders. Like I think there actually are some who would.
I think
do
that gun control is a rare issue in which a lot of people would be mad if the center of the Democratic Party had government completely locked down, and they had a governing coalition. They had like 60 votes in the Senate. I think that gun control is one issue in which Democrats would do things that Republicans would genuinely be mad at. Like a large group of the populace would be mad. A large group of conservatives would be mad. Like that's one issue where I think that Republicans are right about certain policies, not all of them, and I don't think they would go as far as the fear mongering plays into. But there are some issues. There are some policies that the left wants to initiate, the center of the Democratic Party wants to initiate, and I think that would piss a lot of Republicans off. The center of the Democratic Party is nowhere near open borders. That's like absolutely ridiculous. There are maybe a couple fringe people in the House.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at every issue that could get passed in a democratically governed like country, like if we had like they have control right now, let's say like they get rid of the filibuster, they just pass whatever they want. The things that would pass are like super wildly popular. You know what I mean? And like so that's why I think that like the defund the police would never get passed.
But
Open
I also
borders
think
never.
there are some things like that the Democrats have scaremongered about, like nuclear power plants. They're closing down one in New York right now, and they're going to be increasing their purchase of oil from other countries, and like basically just directly making climate change worse because people are so freaked out. Like they get people freaked out about that it's unsafe when I don't really think there's evidence.
I don't think that's no, there's not evidence like that modern, nuclear energy is unsafe. I agree 100%. And in fact, it's even old technology is safer than oil still, like it's just like the mess ups are more catastrophic and like more like widely remembered in our public zeitgeist. But even the public, there's funding for that in the new economic, American Jobs Plan or whatever. Like there's funding for like in AOC's new Green New Deal, the radical lefty AOC, like she put in like a bunch of money to nuclear, like in what she wants, It's not gonna happen, obviously, but like I think even that's like but like I'd give you a couple people, would also, But like I guess my only point with bringing them up was that like the Republican Party is like generally an opposition party that like has no platform, that actually is like trying to scare people more than anything else. And when people like smart people I like, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, people I think are incredible human beings and I look up to and I'm inspired by, when they say things like, let's close the racial wealth gap by giving people baby bonds, like they just make the Republicans' jobs easier. You know what I mean? Like that's my problem with it. Like I want progressives to win, and they just like that's not a winning strategy.
And I also there's one other thing I wanted to go a little bit on here. Where is this? Keep talking on that for a moment. I'm trying to find something here.
Yeah,
yes, I think this is it. So wait, no, this is not it. Continue. Sorry. Let me give me a couple minutes.
Well, I think that like if we left off, we kind of just started jumping around, but in the beginning we were showing like the Lee Drutman study and the Navigator study that was about the number of people who identify themselves in these ways, right? And the numbers themselves just point to lefty politicians, just like we should just dominate. You know what I mean? Like left economic politicians should just destroy. You know what I mean? Like if you the Lee Drutman study said that people who are left economically, this includes the populists, then people who are left economically but right socially, and people who are left economically and left socially. If you combine that group, you have 75%, darn near, like 75% of almost 75% of the American population are left on economic issues. The other study that was Lee Drutman, a really popular and well-respected political scientist. The other study.
Sorry, one sec. If you just look at this right here with these populist voters, look at right here. This is 61, 70, almost 70, over 55. Yeah.
Right, dang near 60. I mean, all these super progressive things, like, a public option. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like a universal pre-K. I mean, like, these are just like dreams. Like when, because I believe it'll happen. I do believe one day we will, in this country, will get our crap together and be a functioning democracy. And listen to the fact that all these people want these left econ things. And when that happens, I will be so happy, because these are amazing things that will make poverty better, make health better, make our people more educated, more raise our standards of living. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy to me that there are so many people who want left econ things, and yet we are so right economically as a country.
And there were two other just kind of quick things. If we gotta get going here, but
no, take your time.
The only thing I want to say with that, with the idea, kind of with the lizard brain state funding thing, the Republicans will do that argument all the time, but the Democrats will also they will how do I put this? They will I'm losing the word, but basically in bad faith make it the funding for the border wall thing. We don't have the money for that. So that will occur with them to some extent.
Yeah. That's for sure. It's just rare that the Republicans actually want to pay
Spend
for
more
something.
Money, yes.
Besides to cut taxes. That's true. That's true.
Go ahead. The only thing I really just want to get was that this populist kind of group of people, they don't have anyone in the House or Senate really. Everybody is either when we are looking at those categories, right? Everybody in the government is essentially here or here, right? There's no one in the government who is this group. And that's what I would like to see, is since this is actually the majority of the population, at least for this question, I would like to see an actual party that represents these people. I actually would be, both for ideological reasons, but also just in general, I think it's less about these people joining these groups, and these people, they need to do their own thing because they are the majority party here in a sense.
Well, and part of that issue is maybe our two-party system, and just the fact that we have to fold people. But I would argue two people that I think are that at least as close as we have today, I think, to that
definition. The West Virginia guy.
No, I don't. I think he's social right, or I think he's econ middle maybe, and social lean right. I mean, he's he shot the ACA on a camera for like for a commercial. Like he's like social right. Like defund my butt was his response to whether
That's social. I mean, that's these people are. They're social right.
Yeah, but then he's also like, he's econ right too, in the sense of like, okay, I will say he has been econ left in the past like week or so.
When he was for that bill for like the
Right,
trillion,
right.
Yeah,
So this past session of Congress, like, but otherwise, like, he's like, I don't know. He says he's against deficit spending, and like, he said he supports. He does support spending a bunch of money if the Republicans sign off on it. So I guess you could be right. Let's say Joe Manchin. We'll take Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is an example. I think Bernie Sanders has spent his career being super econ left, and he was econ left or social left in the sense of like gay marriage support, but like everybody supports gay marriage now, so it's not like he's not into like institutional racism, like he doesn't talk about that.
That's one I actually want to talk about, because Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, right?
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, Vermont has like basically no gun laws. Like I don't know if you know, Vermont, you can't get a permit to carry a gun because there's never been a law making it illegal to carry guns. Therefore, like you don't need a permit at all. Yeah.
That's like your heaven, man.
Yes, and so they actually had Bernie Sanders used to be against gun control, and I think he also said something along the lines of like increased immigration was like a Koch brothers conspiracy to like lower wages. But when he ran for but when he ran for president, he was running with these group of people because this party doesn't exist, and so he of course like went back on all those things.
But no, I think that in 2020 he kind of, he did go a little more social left. But in 2016, like he was certainly like a contrast to Clinton, and I think that he does. That's why he polls so well with a lot of Trump voters. Is like a lot of populists really support him. So I think that we have to give him, at least, if there's anybody that's a populist, it's got to be Sanders, right? Econ left, social. Ambivalent, if not social left, you know what I mean? I understand he's social left, but
it's also one of those things where I feel like did he say he was against gun control because he was in Vermont, or did he say he was for gun control because he was running for the Democrat primary? You know what I'm saying, right?
Right. Yeah. I think he did push a little more in the primaries, like, systemic racism. He mentioned it, but like, I don't think that if he was president today, he would be like up there talking about that. Like, I don't think that, like, I think he would govern as a social right, or at least social. We're not going to give a crap about social problems right now. We're going to do
anything. Yeah.
And I think that that's exactly where Joe Biden is as well. Like, my lefties, and I was one of them, I hated him during the primaries because like, dude, this dude's not left enough economically. He's not left enough socially, blah, 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 blah. And, he eventually developed a much more robust and leftist economic agenda. And his, like, social stuff is, like, supportive in general. But, like, he's definitely not, like, going to come out here. And, I mean, I think gun control is an issue where you could give the knock on. But most social issues, he would be at least a moderate on that. And I think that's why you see people in the suburbs and, just kind of all around supporting him in a lot bigger numbers than somebody like, I don't know, somebody who is a little more lefty on both those issues.
Yeah. And I think
like Elizabeth Warren, for example, like Elizabeth Warren didn't exactly have that type of support. And I think that one of those reasons is because he's a little more moderate on social issues.
You mean Warren?
He's more moderate on social issues.
Okay.
I think that's why he got more support
than Warren. Okay. Sorry, I was just confused.
No worries.
But yeah, I do gotta get rolling here. But I guess there was one other really big thing I wanted to hit on, which is that how do I put this? Like, I guess I would just say, like, I feel like to a great extent these people need more political representation, and I think that the system as a whole would actually be a healthier thing if they did. not just like because of my ideological goals. Like I think you would be for that because like it would satisfy your ideological goals on economics. But I just also think like the not having the very radical constant gridlock between the two parties would be beneficial.
I am,
You know what I'm saying?
so yep. I'm really happy you said that, because that was my literal question that I was going to ask you 2 seconds before you said that. Like, I wanted to know why this mattered to you, because you're one of these folks who are populist, but like, who cares, right? Like, who cares? It makes a small difference whether or not a politician like Hillary Clinton is elected versus, I don't know, Joe Biden, right? Like, theoretically, like, so that's exactly the answer that I need from you, because not only does it make it more likely that we can gain support for the actual material policy changes that we're looking for in society, whether it's increases in education funding, increases in healthcare funding, increases in childcare. I mean, all these different things that are super widely supported that we all want to see. Not only does it help us in that sense, but it also takes our attention away a little bit from what we disagree on and into like, what can we do to solve these problems. And I think that Joe Manchin being an example is probably a good example, because, regardless of, I would just prefer if the Democrats ended a filibuster and just did whatever the heck they want and let the voters decide, hey, did we like that or did we not? We'll choose to who we elect in the next cycle. But I think that he is actually he's helping the Republicans right now. I think he is, by saying, look, I'm going to allow you guys to come together and agree on what you agree on. Focus on these economic issues. Tell me what you agree on and help me get something done so that they don't get rid of the filibuster and take away all your power.
Yeah, no, I hear you completely. And I also just think like there's like, I guess I would say like how do I put this? Like the inability of, wait 1 second here. The inability of the Democrats to very frequently like actually pass economic reform that they want is very, I guess I would say it's very much due to a degree of corporate control of the Democratic Party, and of course with the Republicans even to a greater extent. And so I think there is kind of a movement in those groups to like keep this group and the more populist group out of the picture so that it doesn't break that stranglehold. Does that make sense to you?
I think that that's I don't think that it's as intentional to keep them out. I think that it's like a byproduct of like the issues that they choose to focus on, because of the same thing that you just mentioned, of like having many politicians who are corporately backed, who don't want to touch certain issues that are typically economic because they hurt the profits of some corporation or some big, person that funds their election campaign. And so I think that they like try and stay out of certain issues. And so in doing so, the issues that touch a lot of populist lives are, why is my diabetes expensive? My diabetes medication so expensive? Why can't I find childcare? Why is my, dollar worth less now than it was 10 years ago? So there are these material things that those people care about, and there are these other things that the Democrats, because a lot of these Democrats have corporate backers, they don't want to touch these issues. And so I don't think it's as much as like the politicians saying no to these voters. I think the voters are probably rightly saying no to these politicians who they don't feel are addressing their concerns.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, well, Fallon, thank you so much for being on the show. It's honestly been a pleasure. I love talking about anything and all things politics with you. I think that you are a good example of an American who has ideas that I disagree with, and who has conversations with me that sometimes make us want to fight each other. But that generally end with a laugh, and with an "I love you," and with both of us understanding that both of us want what's best for the country and that we're willing to work for it. So I just want to say thank you very much again for being on the show, and I hope everybody can emulate your ability to discuss things in an open-minded way, even with somebody who disagrees with you in many ways.
Well, thank you, man, and same to you. I do actually gotta get going because I was at work to 7 and I didn't have dinner and I still haven't. So I'm gonna get some dinner.
For spending so much time. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, man. But you have a great day here, okay?
Thanks so much. Take it easy.
Thanks. Bye.